Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation of Triggers of Depression by Andrea Carrasco, Favor Bano, Kelly Peña, Tania Medina, and Farah Miles. We are the Socio Chicks from the Intro to Research Methods course at Cal State Long Beach. We hope you enjoy our presentation. Hello. When thinking about a topic that addresses an issue within a community, we chose the topic depression. Depression is a delicate topic, yet a very important one. Depression is everywhere. At home, at work, or even places where we may feel the happiest, but we are not, such as school. School is like a roller coaster. It's fun, yet boring. It's easy, yet equally difficult at the same time. And when in college, it's even more difficult. For that reason, we chose the topic depression with the purpose of obtaining the average rate of college students facing depression while also determining the triggers of depression.
So for this slide, I'm going to be talking about research hypotheses and the ways in which we went about collecting the data to conclude these hypotheses. So the first one states that college students with a job experience more stress and sleep deprivation compared to students without a job. So the ways in which we collected this data was through a number of questions within our questionnaire. And these two specifically asked about the number of hours worked and the number of hours slept, usually within the school week. So this was about an approximate number just to gauge how much this participant intakes sleep and intakes hours of work outside of schoolwork. And so hypothesis 2 states college students who eat a high level of sugar experience higher risk of depression. So the ways in which we collected the data for this was asking about protein intake and asking about sugar intake and just overall nutrition levels. And the ways in which we measured depression was we measured just overall mental health and mental well-being, but we also measured the symptoms of depression and the overall factors that come with depression, such as lack of self-care, unclean room, and other factors like that. And so for hypothesis 3, it states college students with high levels of depression will most likely have poor academic performance. So again, with collecting this data, we just measured the symptoms of depression. So your willingness to do everyday tasks and your ability to do those tasks, as well as measuring their academic performance through their GPA. And so hypothesis 4 states college students who have a higher class workload tend to have higher stress levels than those who do not. So the ways in which we measured this was asking them on a scale of 1 to 5 to rate their stress levels, and the ways in which we measure their workloads was an approximate number of how many days that they have outside activities, whether it be work, whether it be activities, or whether it be something else. And the last hypothesis is college students who tend to overconsume alcohol tend to have higher levels of depression and poor academic performance. So again, we measured these through the questions in the questionnaire, and we determined their academic performance with their GPA, and we measure their levels of depression, again, with the symptoms of depression and the overall mental well-being of the person.
As a team, we work collaboratively to create a questionnaire that will help researchers learn more about the triggers to depression in college students. To obtain this information, we surveyed students from Cal State Long Beach. Together, we gathered near the Student Union and the University Library. There were a total of 50 participants. Each of us was responsible for surveying 10 participants. All students were approached kindly and very respectfully. For each student that voluntarily participated in the questionnaire, they received a free Long Beach tote bag. To go about the questionnaire process, participants were handed a consent form that was intended to be read and signed with the purpose of comprehending the procedure included for data collection. Participants were then given the option of a digital or manual copy. It was a 5-page questionnaire, approximately 37 questions and instructions included. The survey consisted of some fill-in responses, while other questions were to be used in scale answers, choosing from 1 to 10, where 1 meant never and 10 meant very often. Other responses were to select if you agree or disagree. Participants were asked demographic questions like gender, age, ethnicity, and how many years have they attended in college. Some questions were open-ended questions like, what are some reasons you experience stress in college? Also questions like, what are the reasons why you sleep less hours? Questions about their work life were also asked. As a team,
So for this slide, we'll be talking about the proposed results and findings and the correlational trends within our data to help us find the concluded hypotheses. So I stated 4 correlational trends on the left that correlate with the data on the right. So the first one is lack of nutrition and poor academic performance. And this is going to be the chart on the top left. And lack of nutrition is going to be the blue line, and poor academic performance is going to represent the red line. And so for this measurement, I used a scale of 1 to 5 for both of them. Therefore, I can see the correlation in between the data and the comparison. So I measured 1 being very, very poor academically, or very, very poor nutrition. So less than 2 meals a day and not nourishing yourself. And 5 being very good. So good nutrition, nourishing yourself, and having good GPA outstanding. So within the data, we can see a direct correlation as the blue and red line cross over and overlap multiple times. So I saw a direct correlation in how you nourish yourself and how well you perform academically. So if you have a lack of nutrition, it is more likely you're going to have poor academic performance. I also saw a correlation as the average means was very similar, as the average mean for lack of nutrition was 3.4 and poor academic performance was 3. The next correlational trend that I saw over and over within our data was the excess alcohol intake and higher depression levels. So this data is going to be shown on the bottom left, and you can see again, just as the one on the top, the red and blue lines are very similarly correlated with each other. So the red line, again, is going to be depression levels, and the blue line is going to be alcohol intake. And again, I use the same level of measurement of 1 to 5, 1 being very horribly taking care of yourself, very low depression or very high depression levels, and a lot of excess alcohol intake, and 5 being overall happy and no drinking whatsoever. And so you can see they correlate with each other as the average means are 2.4 and 3.1, and they again overlap on the same data. And we concluded that the excess alcohol intake usually correlates with depression levels. Therefore, if you drink excessively, it is usually correlated with higher depression levels. The third correlational trend is going to be workload and higher stress levels. So workload is under the category of homework and work and activities outside of school, such as sports. And this chart is going to be on the bottom right. And we can see again how closely they correlate with each other and how closely the lines overlap. So the stress levels is going to be the blue line, and the red line is going to be the workload. So we saw a direct correlation as the more the workload, the higher the stress levels, and the lower the workload, the lower the stress levels were. And we concluded that there was a correlation between stress and the amount of work that you are given in school. The average means for workload was 3.6 on a scale of 1 to 5, meaning over 50% of students have activities outside of school, such as work or sports. And the average mean for stress levels was 4.2, meaning stress is at an all-time high for students, as these two are very close together, and the workload definitely adds to this stress level being so high. And the last correlational trend I'm going to be talking about is depression and stress levels and poor academic performance. As you can see, the data is presented a little bit differently, as poor academic performance is on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being horrible academic performance and 5 being good academic performance, and depression levels, 1 being very, very happy and very, very content, and 5 being absolutely depressed and very, very sad. So we can see a correlation in between these two, but of the exact opposite. So the higher the depression levels, the more likely you are going to be having poor academic performance. So the larger the depression levels, the smaller the number of your GPA in the academic performance. So this is why on the top right-hand corner, it is looks like it's opposite of each other, and that is because they are correlated so closely with each other, as depression and stress levels are seen to definitely have an impact on academic performance. The means, again, were very close to each other, as the average mean for depression and stress levels was 3.1 and poor academic performance was 4. And so we concluded with all of our data that lack of nutrition has a direct effect on poor academic performance. Excess alcohol intake usually correlates with higher depression levels. A larger workload usually correlates with higher stress levels, and higher depression and stress levels directly correlate with poor academic performance. So for this slide, when we talk
As a result of our research, our hypothesis proved to be true. When drawing conclusions and considering participants' selections for the questionnaire, we concluded that college students at Cal State Long Beach do experience depression. Out of 50 participants that contributed to our research, 60% of participants encounter depression. This could be for many reasons, such as the lack of sleep, the excessive work hours, the lack of breakfast meal intake, high levels of stress, or even excessive workload. For these reasons, students have a low academic performance. We know this from the questionnaire, in which we ask questions such as, what is your current GPA? And about 30% of participants had an average GPA of 2.0 or lower. Our hypotheses were all well supported, highlighting the triggers of depression and the impacts it may have on a college student's academic life.
Hello everyone, I'm going to be talking about the future directions, shortcomings, and limitations that we experienced in this study. I did want to start off with the limitations. I think one of the biggest limitations that we experienced in this study was the fact that we only looked at our participants for a short period of time. This in itself could have yielded inaccurate results only due to the fact that we were looking at them in that moment in time, and we could have caught them on a bad day when they were going through midterms, finals, possible projects that are going to be due soon. We could have just caught them on a bad day where they were feeling more stressed than usual, and this is why this would be considered a limitation. Another possible limitation was that as a group, we should have been made aware of any possible stresses that were outside of the academic realm, only because school is not necessarily the only cause of stress in someone's life, and it would have been important to take into consideration any possible outside stressors that could have affected the participants during the time that they were participating in the study. As a future direction for this study, I think that we should look at the types of individuals being studied. They could possibly take a further look into their majors and see any possible trends of stress that could occur within the majors. It would be interesting to compare the majors and to see if there's any majors where stress could be a trend, or where they don't really see any stress at all. That would also be interesting to look at. Based on the individuals in their major more than their weekly class workloads. And then another possible development for this study could also be just kind of building on the one that I spoke about earlier in the limitations section. I think it would be a good development to look at the participants over a longer period of time and not just necessarily the moment in time like we did. A good development would be looking at them either over a course of a semester, or honestly even the course of an academic year. That way we could possibly compare the 2 semesters and see if the feelings or stress are common around a certain time of the semester. This in itself would also yield more accurate results, only due to the fact that we would have more consistent information about how these participants are feeling on a daily basis.